I am Deborah Lee, and I'm a former regional leader in the Northwest. I'm currently serving as one of RISE's engagement coordinators. I also recently chaired RISE's Volunteer Recognition Reorganization Task Force. And I'll be the moderator for tonight's event, whether this is your first RISE event or you're a returning member. Thank you for joining us this evening. We really are delighted to have you. As many of you know, Together Women Rise is a powerful community of women and allies dedicated to achieving global gender equality. Together, we learn about and advocate for gender equality issues, give grants to organizations that empower women and girls in low-income communities in the Global South, and build community to forge meaningful connections with each other and with women around the world. Our model is based on collective giving by harnessing the power of coming together. All contributions are valued and can make a powerful impact. If you're interested in supporting Together Women Rise or learning more, please do visit our website at togetherwomenrise.org. Before we get started, there are, of course, some Zoom reminders. Please keep yourself on mute while our speakers are presenting. There will be a question and answer time after the speakers, so please enter any questions you have in the chat function at any time. We will do our best to get to as many questions as we can. There's also a closed captioning feature that has been enabled for your use. And to start that, you just go to your Zoom toolbar and click on the Show Captions in your language of choice. Okay, it's now time to turn to our program for tonight. At these monthly webinars, you have the opportunity to learn about the challenges and issues faced by women and girls, as well as the important work that together we are funding. This month, we are focusing on the value of breaking down barriers to girls' education with our two featured grantees, Flying Kites in Kenya and Impact Network International in Zambia. First, we're going to play a short video about these organizations. Then we will have our conversations with our guest speakers, Morgan and Reshma.
Hello, I am Dr. Vinola Vincent-Mannion, and it is a point of pride for me that I have been actively engaged with Together Women Rise for the past 8 years and counting. I am the writer of the Culture and Cuisines piece. I am a recipe co-curator, and I am a member of the Community Building and Learning Committee. My why, the reason why I continue to invest my time and my resources in Together Women Rise is because I firmly believe, and the data proves this, that when we invest in women and girls, we are not just uplifting those individual women and girls, but we are, through a ripple effect, uplifting their families and, by extension, their communities and the entire regions. As an educator, providing women and girls with equal access to educational opportunities and other economic opportunities is very dear to my heart. So I am especially thrilled to introduce our featured grantees for the month of August, Flying Kites and Impact Network International, as their sphere of influence is in education. Worldwide, 129 million girls are not in school. Access to education is denied for a myriad of reasons. Some barriers are systemic, like gender discrimination, poverty, gender-based violence, child marriage, regional conflicts, etc. And then there are those barriers that are due to a lack of resources and information. The stigma around menstruation and the lack of hygiene products to manage menstruation is one such unfortunately common barrier. In fact, only 39% of schools provide menstrual health education. Flying kites in Kenya, in rural Kenya, is addressing this rather dire need for girls to fulfill their right to education by overcoming some of the stigma associated with menstruation. Together Women Rise is supporting the Girls United Club, which partners with teachers and with public primary schools to provide not just foundational literacy to the girls, but it also provides sexual and reproductive health education. It enables the girls to build social networks. They teach the girls leadership skills. They teach them about gender-based violence, and they also teach them about decision making. Their vision is for the girls to realize their human rights by making informed choices about their bodies, their education, and their future. And that is something I believe we can all enthusiastically support. Impact Network International are based in Zambia, and they are in a region where literacy outcomes are extremely poor. The average scores were 35% in English and 37% in math. And the aim of Impact Network International is to not just provide effective education where they improve educational outcomes, but also to improve overall well-being. 6,097 students have been served through 43 schools. Together Women Rise knows that girls, when given the opportunity, can be really powerful agents of change in the world. And that is the theme of a special event we are holding for International Day of the Girl Child in October. We are partnering with Madre, an organization working to advance women's human rights. At this event, we will bring you a series of girl leaders who are making systemic change, showing resilience and engaging in decision-making on peace building, climate disaster, and gender-based violence. So please mark your calendars for Thursday, October 10th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time and 9 p.m. Pacific Time, so you can listen to these change makers and the impact that they are creating. Another event to mark on your calendar is the book club event in September. We're featuring the book Last to Eat, Last to Learn, My Life in Afghanistan, Fighting to Educate Women. The author, Pashtana Durrani, will be our guest speaker on September 12th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. We will have a second event on September 19th for those who would like to have a much more in-depth discussion on the book. You can learn more about this event and all other events like these on the Together Women Rise website. Please remember that Together Women Rise depends on your support to fund grantees such as Flying Kites and Impact Network International, so that they can go out and do the world-changing work that they do by uplifting women and girls. Your support also enables Together Women Rise to offer high-quality education and engagement opportunities. So please remember to check out the website and to be actively engaged with the organization. Thank you for all your support.
At Flying Kites, we partner with teachers to transform public primary schools into places where girls can thrive. Our teacher-led Girls United clubs establish important social networks for thousands of girls at a critical time in their physical and emotional development and provide them with access to information and resources on menstrual health and hygiene, sexual and reproductive health, leadership skills, self-esteem, and self-efficacy.
Hi, my name is Georgina Wanjibuguvi. I'm the Director of Programs at Flying Kites. For me, the work that we do and the communities that we partner with is so valuable, because as a young girl who was born and raised in this community. I see the need for girls to have spaces and trusted adults to work with them and the spaces to engage and share and learn about their bodies and prepare for the next phase of life. So the interventions of Lykites in our public primary schools that we've partnered with is valuable because we are providing the schools with the environment that is necessary for girls to thrive. For girls to thrive, it requires much more than providing just education that is provided in the classroom. And that's why we've come in with Girls United clubs. And these clubs are led by trusted female teachers in their schools, teachers who have the training and the skills and the resources that are required to make sure that girls have people that they can go to and people that can walk alongside them in their journey of growing up.
My name is Evelyn Green, a teacher at Flykites, a former student here at Chile Primary School and a chief platform at Flykites. So this is where my journey began. Actually, in the same stream. This would be my class 1 in 2019. Happened to begin a journey up to where we are now. What I would say about my journey? The journey was not an easy journey. Being a girl growing up in South Kenya, whereby girls' education was not taken much as an important thing in society. But struggled in here we have variety, or I would say lesson based on girls' life. We started introducing the girls to hygiene when they are age 9 to 11. Then from there, we begin teaching the girls about period health and menstrual health. Now, by the time we're able to understand what is happening in our lives, and it is actually something that I have gone through, appreciate at first. In our days, no one told us this. It was something that just was applicable to everyone. We couldn't tell you one particular experience. Being able to talk to these kids who are being healed, inahapeleki, and what is supposed to do about it. It brings a lot of joy to us.
Esther, the Jew Chania Primary School. I've been in this school for a number of years. In fact, for the last 30 years, I've been in this school. So since I joined this school, we have tried our best to empower our girls. A true example is Eva, who is a former pupil in our school. We can see there is some improvement from the support that we have been giving our girls. From the onset of the GU, we have noted a lot of changes because one of the aim of the GU club was to empower our girls, one, for them to get a safe place and to develop self-esteem in our girls, of which we have noted because since the onset of GU, we have not had any girl dropping out of school because of pregnancy. So all our girls have completed with their primary school course, and we make sure that they join secondary school.
With support from Together Women Rise, 10 new schools will benefit from Girls United clubs and other interventions in 2025, more than doubling our impact. But our ambition doesn't stop there. With a vision to ensure that all girls have the resources needed to live healthy, self-determined lives, we've developed an expansion strategy to reach all 46 public primary schools in our sub-county, more than 10,000 girls by 2028.
We are so grateful to Together Women Rise because it is such partnerships that help us to achieve the dream that we have of making schools become spaces that girls can thrive. Thank you so much.
In rural communities across Zambia, Impact Network is transforming lives through education and innovation. With over 6,000 students across 40+ schools, Covering early childhood through 7th grade, Impact Network is using education as a catalyst for change. By starting with a school, we are able to make broad changes across communities, improve both educational outcomes and overall well-being. One of our key focuses is keeping girls in school, knowing that it's one of the biggest factors that secures long-term change in communities. An extra year of primary school increases wages for girls by an eventual 10 to 20%. Additionally, many adolescent girls in rural Zambia lack critical menstrual health, hygiene materials, and knowledge. That's why Impact Girls was created, to address pressing challenges faced by rural girls and young women, including their lack of agency in decisions about education, health, and their own lives. Since our inception, we've been working with girls, focusing on specialized programs tailored to their unique needs. Our menstrual health hygiene workshops work to destigmatize menstruation, educate girls about menstrual health and hygiene, and demonstrate how to create reusable pads. Our Glow Clubs engage adolescent female students in a series of 13 lessons. The club provides lessons on leadership, personal hygiene, self-esteem, and gender equality. The Net Girls Zambia League is a rural netball competition involving over 1,000 girls and young women across junior and varsity teams. Research shows that giving girls the opportunity to engage in physical activities like sports not only improves physical health, but has long-term benefits that break down gender stereotypes, expand social networks, and increase happiness. We also offer financial workshops to women in the community, providing modules on money management, budgeting, and entrepreneurship. At the end of the workshop, groups can create a group business plan to be submitted for potential funding. The plans typically involve things like raising and selling chickens and have low costs. This year, our mentor pilot will pair female graduates with current primary students. This will help inspire the next generation of primary students, build confidence for secondary students, and improve educational outcomes for struggling primary students. We also support women teachers, offering job opportunities and ensuring that they can be role models for their classes. By empowering our female students, we are creating opportunities for girls to thrive. By empowering our female teachers and staff, we are building a foundation for long-term change. By empowering the mothers, aunts, and grandmothers of our students, Impact Network is transforming communities in rural Zambia. We are excited to partner with Together Women Rise to support Impact Girls over the next 2 years. Our partnership will help girls stay healthy, do better in school, and support female teachers. We are grateful to Together Women Rise for this opportunity to make a positive and lasting change in the lives of rural girls and young women in Zambia.
Aren't we lucky to realize how many people are doing such great things to help girls and women throughout the world? Tonight, we're pleased to have with us Morgan Cormier, Manager of the Institutional Partnerships at Flying Kites, and Reshma Patel, Executive Director of Impact Network. Reshma has been the Executive Director for the last 12 years. Under her leadership, Impact Network has grown from 9 to over 40 schools. Reshma is an expert in education, program scaling, and impact evaluation. Before joining Impact Network, she worked at the MDRC, which is a nonprofit, nonpartisan social policy research firm focused on improving the lives of low-income communities, particularly in education. Prior to MDRC, Reshma was a pension risk analyst at Morgan Stanley. Morgan is the manager of the institutional partnerships at Flying Kites. In her role, she works closely across the programs and development teams to raise critical funds that support Flying Kites' work to provide access to education for adolescent girls in rural Kenya. Prior to joining Flying Kites in 2020, she spent 3 years serving as a Peace Corps volunteer in Tanzania, working on community health promotion projects focused on girls and women's health. Welcome both Reshma and Morgan. And it's my understanding Reshma just flew in from India 2 hours ago. So we especially applaud her for being here and her stamina for joining us tonight. Thank you. Over the next 20 minutes, I'll be asking our guests a series of questions about their organizations. We will have time after for audience questions, so please make sure you put your questions in the chat now for Sarah to read during that portion of our program. So Reshma, I would like to start with you and the story of Impact Network International. Can you share how Impact Network was founded and what motivated its focus on education in rural Zambia?
Sure, and really happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting us. And we just appreciate the opportunity. So Impact Network was started by a Peace Corps volunteer. So nice to see that common thread, Morgan, with flying kites. A friend of mine did the Peace Corps in the early 2000s, and he was living in a rural village in Zambia, so a space with no electricity, no infrastructure, no phone network at that time. And he came away just astounded that there was no school in the community. And so he came back to the US and held like a small fundraiser to build a school for this community. And that's how it started. It was a one classroom school, and immediately had over, I think, 100 kids in the first year. And so we held different fundraisers at small bars in New York City, just trying to get, okay, we'll build another classroom and another classroom. And it grew from that. And I think one of the things that still holds us dear is that original school in Joel Village has close to 600 students now. It's a huge school that serves over 12 local communities that would not have otherwise had access to a school. Over the years, we've changed our focus from access to quality. So now we see more and more schools being built. And in Zambia, there's a model for schools called community schools, where communities can build their own school that's not under the Ministry of Education and run it somewhat independently. And so we started to work more with these community schools because they were severely underfunded and more likely to be located in very rural areas, so similar to Joel Village, our first school. And that's really how it started. Now we work in over 40 schools. We serve 6,000 students. Our key program is a holistic education program that really centers on empowering teachers with the tools and technology to teach effectively. And surrounding that by a really critical support system to improve the overall lives of our students and families, especially girls, which I know we're going to be discussing in more detail shortly. And so far, it's been incredibly successful. I think last year, at the end of grade 7, so we work in primary schools. At the end of grade 7, students in Zambia write an exam to graduate to secondary school. Last year, our pass rate was 87%, and that's compared to a 63% pass rate for the country. So just really big results in being able to allow our students to continue on into secondary schools. So I'll stop there and give Morgan a chance.
Fantastic. I know you could talk on, and we could listen all evening, but thank you, Reshma. Morgan, can you tell us what inspired the establishment of Flying Kites and its approach to girls' education and empowerment in Kenya? And I'd like to add just quickly also the name. Can you share with us how you came up with the name, or who came up with that?
So first, great to be here with everyone. Thank you for inviting us here and to share more about Flying Kites. The funny thing about the name is that I've asked the same question of our co-founders, and it was kind of like, we thought it was whimsical and exciting, and we wanted to capture like childhood and the excitement of that. And so we started as Flying Kites in 2006, and the name has stuck since then. So that's kind of where it started. But as I mentioned, in 2006, Flying Kites was founded by our 3 co-founders who, while they were in university, had gone to Nairobi to volunteer. I think they were working in an orphanage that really just didn't have any access to real services for children. And so inspired, through their anthropology courses in university and the philosophy of Dr. Paul Farmer and, a preferential option for the poor in healthcare, they wanted to see, like, what does that look like in the education sphere? And so Similarly, they came home, they started fundraising, and they were able to get a plot of land in Jibini, Kenya, which is about 2 hours north of Nairobi. Very lush, green, beautiful, waters flowing. And they built our academy. So we started out with 4 classrooms, and about 30 students. And then over the years, as our school grew, we realized that we weren't going to be able to meet the needs of all of the children in our surrounding community just through our school. And so we formed the Flying Kites School Network, which is a formal partnership that we have with public primary schools in our sub-county. And so rather than just expanding our school, we really wanted to provide support to those systems that already exist in the primary schools that already were existing in the community. And so 2018, we launched our first cohort of our network schools, which was 4 schools focused on teacher training, and really ensuring that teachers had access to, the support that they needed to implement their curriculum, to support their students, and to support each other, to really have that, opportunity for peer support and learning. And through that network is really where we started to uncover some of these challenges that girls were having in the community. And especially during COVID, when schools in Kenya closed for 10 months and children were at home, we saw, significant increases in the community of early pregnancy, of gender-based violence, specifically against girls. And there were lots of concerns about not only the learning that was being lost in those 10 months, but also, the implication for girls' rights and their ability to go back to school once schools reopened. And so Girls United was kind of born out of those needs and some emergency sessions that we held outside, masked, to deliver menstrual hygiene kits to about 700 girls and ask them, like, what are the challenges that you're facing and how can we support you to go back to school when they reopen and to really thrive in school. And so from there, our Girls United program kind of took off, and we started out with our clubs, and that's really been the turning point for our focus now, which is really all framed around our interventions for young adolescent girls in that primary school age, who are oftentimes left out of some of the interventions that are focused on secondary school or tertiary. And so these girls that are 10 to 14 years old sometimes miss out on critical information at a time when they really need it. So that's how we got to, probably a long version, but how we got to where we are today.
That's fantastic. And it's so inspiring to see how, one person has an amazing experience, and from that, so much grows. I mean, it's the story of Together Women Rise as well. Just a few people go and experience something and share, and it grows and it grows. And it's so inspiring what you both are doing. I'd like to ask both of you a few questions. Our support for Flying Kites and Impact International over the next 2 years will provide holistic education approaches to ensure that every girl has access to the critical resources that she needs to thrive in school, including leadership skills and sexual and reproductive health information. So can you each please tell us more about the barriers to education that girls are experiencing and why programs like these are critical? Anybody want to start, Reshma?
Yeah, I can start. And I think, the Together Women Rise member that introduced the video, I think touched on so many of these, right? I think adolescent girls in rural Zambia and many places across the globe just lack both critical menstrual health hygiene knowledge and materials. They might not have access to private bathrooms to make sure that they have a space that's private to change their pads. They don't necessarily have clean pads with them. They might only have one reusable pad or none, or rags. And so poorly managed menstrual health hygiene broadly contributes up to 4 to 5 missed days of school each month for girls around the world. I think also additionally, young women are just not empowered to have control over their own bodies. Zambia in particular has a teenage pregnancy rate of 15%, which is one of the highest in this UNICEF study of countries. Almost a third of girls 15 to 19 have a child or are pregnant. And one thing that I think sometimes gets missed in the statistics about barriers for girls, they don't get to have fun. There's not play and free time that's allocated to them. They're given a lot of household chores that they're responsible for. They're caretaking younger children. One of the things that really struck me when I was in my 20s and traveled through India and Africa is that boys were outside playing. They were sort of rolling tires, walking around the village, and girls were often doing chores. And so some of the programs that we built are really intentional around these. So we have pad making workshops for all of our adolescent girls from grades 5 through 7. Every year, they join this workshop. They learn about menstrual health hygiene and from their peers and from teachers in a very fun way, I want to say, that's very aimed at, like, all of the pads that we make are fun prints. So they learn how to make reusable pads. They learn how to sew them and stitch them, to create the fabric, how to find the fabric locally. You can use local chitenge for like this wrapper to make them a little more private. So all sorts of things that are really designed to make them both likely to be used and a little give them a little privacy and some agency over these. We also run glow clubs, which are girl clubs. We also run boys clubs as well, that are aimed at talking about, everything from puberty to childhood relationships with family members, for example, and building strong bonds with brothers and sisters and uncles and aunts so that they can be allies in conflict when girls encounter conflict. We have child protection measures across all of our schools. We have social workers that work with at-risk girls in order to help them if they're a victim of gender-based violence in their home or their community. We will often be on the front lines of trying to get them to the right agency and get them the right healthcare in order for them to still thrive. And we run pregnancy reintegration programs. Morgan talked about this a little bit after COVID and in terms of reintegration, but in particular, we find that when students get pregnant, they don't come back to school. And one of our main goals is to build the support and the school environment that makes a welcoming place for them to return to school. And last, we have our Rural Netball League that's really designed for girls to be able to have fun. The video talked about that a little bit, but it's really supposed to be a place where it's not academic. We don't have a workshop. It's girls playing netball together and having a good time.
Wonderful. Thank you. Morgan, do you want to add to that in terms of, what is a barrier standing in the way for the girls you're serving?
Yeah, as typically happens, there's a lot of overlap in what Rashma's, articulating about girls in rural Zambia, and a lot of girls in rural Kenya are facing a lot of similar challenges, early pregnancy, gender-based violence. But, I think this idea of not only fun, which is something that we also try to, provide a space for girls to have. We piloted GU Sports, our like Girls United sports competitions last year for that very reason, because oftentimes girls aren't having that space, but also our clubs really serving as that social network for girls to have trusted adults in their lives, which are the teachers who we train to lead our clubs, but also their peers, and really bringing in parents. So all of our girls have a letter that gets sent home, and our GU patrons who lead our clubs are really great about hosting, meetings for parents to learn about what we cover in Girls United so that they're getting the information as well and feel empowered to have these conversations at home. Research shows that some of the most influential people on a young girl's lives are her teachers and her parents. And so we really want to empower both of those groups to be able to provide accurate information and to feel comfortable having these, discussions. So in addition to the more tangible, the menstrual hygiene kits that we provide, or, the wash infrastructure that we might support a school with, really just having that space to ask a question, to get accurate information, to, report an incident of gender-based violence, and connect girls with child protection volunteers, which are similar to how like a community health worker model is structured, but it's through the Directorate of Children's Services. And so we've been able to bring the child protection volunteers and kind of bring them into the school communities so that girls know that that's another trusted adult they can go to should they, them or one of their peers be a victim of gender-based violence, and really ensure that, girls are getting the care they need, whether that looks like going, through the judiciary, which we know, unfortunately, globally, that doesn't always mean that you're going to get justice, and it can be really traumatic. So if that just means providing, counseling or access to healthcare, whatever that girl, needs to remain in school and to be safe in her home and her community. So those are a few of the barriers that we're currently addressing, but also have our eyes on the fact that, climate change and weather changes and flooding that was experienced across Kenya and COVID and all of these other, factors that unfortunately tend to impact girls and women most severely, and thinking about ways that we can be proactive to ensure that in times of crisis or natural disasters, how are we able to mobilize the network that we've built to really support girls, whether they're, in school or schools are closed for 10 months, which we hope never happens again. But
and we've certainly seen some powerful needs that way. And you both touched on this a little bit, but could you go into a little more depth on ways that your organizations collaborate with local communities and authorities to ensure sustainability and community ownership of your educational programs? Morgan, why don't we just start with you on that?
yeah, so I think, the most significant way we do that is that all of our programs are implemented through public primary schools and in partnership with those heads of school and the boards of management, and then also all of the other supporting agencies. So the Directorate of Children's Services, the gender desk officers at the police station, chiefs, and other local government officials. Not only are we, bringing them in on the design of our program. So as I mentioned, through community meetings talking about, issues of pregnancy rates skyrocketing through COVID. So really making sure that our community is on the forefront of identifying those needs, and then also helping us to design the program of how we want to address it. So a great example of this is when we decided to really create a more robust gender-based violence prevention program. Our initial thought was, we already have these trained, female teachers leading clubs, and they can kind of support the, reporting of gender-based violence. And what we learned through our collaboration was that actually teachers didn't feel comfortable doing that. They were worried about retaliation, they might have felt nervous. And because we had that really close relationship, they felt comfortable saying, that actually doesn't feel like a safe option for us. And through that, we were able to support the Directorate of Children's Services in actually recruiting and training these child protection volunteers, which are laid out in the Child Protection Act of Kenya. But unfortunately, during COVID, a lot of offices didn't have resources, and so there weren't any active child protection volunteers. And so through, learning this with our GU patrons and then through other community members, we were able to not only, shift our strategy, but also provide support so that we could recruit and train child protection volunteers, and now have a very active network of 30 child protection volunteers that we work closely with. So we just try to, consistently learn and get better and, meet the changing needs. We anticipate that needs of girls are going to continue to shift and change as, the community does. And so just making sure that we're providing as many opportunities as we can for parents and students and community members to give us feedback and to, feel like it is a reciprocal relationship, and that we're not just, mandating what's being delivered.
Excellent. Thank you. Reshma, do you have something to add in terms of how you're working with local authorities?
Sure, yeah. I mentioned this earlier, but Zambia has this particular classification for community schools, which really does mean the community retains ownership and decision-making power over the school. And so each school has the equivalent of a PTA that governs how the school works. So in our cases, the PTA sort of invites Impact Network to work in the school, and we work with teachers that we hire and train that still fall under the community school structure. Part of that is also linked to our community sensitization work. So we do community workshops in every school, at least once a year, often twice a year. And they are typically around different topics, but they tend to be really child protection focused. So each community school has a child protection committee that is sort of charged with the safety of students in the school. And so those communities tend to be the first line of who we work with if there is a child protection incident. And then we work through the local referral agencies in order to both advocate for our students and often their families, but also try and see justice for them. As Morgan mentioned, there's a lot of laws in the Child Protection Act in Zambia. There was just a recent one that passed in the last couple of years, but the enforcement of that is just not as strong as you'd like to see, as in many places around the globe. And so it requires a ton of being very persistent with these referral agencies, with these different groups, finding the right group or person that can help support those activities. And I find like so much of the work we do to support girls, there's an entire body of work that is preventative, right? To educate and work with both boys and girls in the community. But then there's this whole body of work that is really reactive when we have an incident or need support for girls. And so we try and work on both sides of that with the community, through the community sensitization for a lot of the prevention work and through the actual referral agencies and existing bodies in Zambia for some of the more urgent at-risk work.
Wonderful. I see that we have asked that if anybody has questions to make sure to put them in the chat. So we'll want to keep my questions pretty brief so that we can get to the other people's questions. But I was just wondering if, as your work has progressed, are you noticing any shifts toward gender equality or any shifts in how the girls are responding and seeing themselves or within the family structure? Can you just really briefly address that, Reshma?
Sure. Yeah, a couple of examples, I think. And the short answer is yes, but the work is really slow. I think the one thing that when we started doing this community sensitization and really formalizing our child protection work, one thing we noticed was that we had a ton more disclosures, right? So as soon as you create a safe space, you can expect more people to come forward. And I think one thing that was really tough for our team in Zambia was like, oh my gosh, like all of this has been happening and we had no idea. And it took like a real shift in our mindset to understand that someone coming forward means that school is a safe space where they can come forward. The other thing is that over time, our schools have enrolled more and more girls. So right now we're at 60% female student population. And the feedback we've gotten from communities is that our schools are considered safe places to send their female students, to send their daughters or their nieces. I mentioned the grade 7 exam success rate we had last year, where a strong majority of our students pass their exams and can move on to secondary school. We had no differences in graduation rates between boys and girls, and we actually had more girls write the exam than boys because we have more girls enrolled. And so I think we do see really big shifts in terms of these graduation rates and data. But something that's been a really big shift in mindset was that safe space and the idea that if you're creating a safe space, you will have more and more disclosures.
Wonderful. Okay, how about you, Morgan? Can you share some?
Yeah, I think we're currently experiencing that exact same shift. Last year was our first official pilot of our gender-based violence prevention initiative. So the great thing is that the information is out there and we're creating this network of support. But that has led to a significant increase in reports that are going to the Directorate of Children's Services and the judiciary, which is a system that can't right now handle that caseload. And so we're trying to, collaborate with community partners to think about how we can support that system now that we're seeing more reports, which doesn't necessarily mean that it's happening more often. It just means that it's being reported. And so that's one of our challenges. But I think what we've seen through our Girls United clubs, again, is just that network, that trusted adult who you can ask a question to, or you can disclose information to, and feeling like you have, someone who can give you accurate information. We see a lot of decisions that might be made by an adolescent girl because they don't have access to information, or, maybe they are lacking a resource. And so they're engaging in an unhealthy relationship or an unsafe relationship. And so I think the biggest shift we've seen is that, relationship between our Girls United patrons and the students that they're, teaching within the Girls United clubs. And again, that slow process that eventually we hope that does lead to, girls feeling like they can live a self-determined life. And so we hope that means going on and graduating secondary school, but really we want it to mean that girl is able to make whatever decision is best for her and her health and her education. And so it's slow progress, but we're moving in the right direction, which is exciting.
Wonderful, thank you. We have just a couple minutes left, so if you can think about one or two things that you're looking forward to in terms of expansion plans or new initiatives to help further the support of girls' education and empowerment. From the sound of it, with both your organizations, you're doing so much, but can you just highlight one or two things that you're looking forward to doing in the future? Morgan?
Yeah, absolutely. With support from Together Women Rise, we're very excited that beginning next year, we're actually going to be adding 10 new partner schools who are all within our sub-county to our network. So they will be receiving our Girls United clubs, our gender-based violence prevention initiative, access to menstrual hygiene kits. And that trajectory will continue, whereby in 2028, we're hoping to be in all 46 public primary schools in our sub-county and really focus on that systems change and building this, expanding our network out of not only our Support Us Flying Kites, but all of these community partners that we're working with.
Fantastic. Reshma, how about you?
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about the Female Mentor Program that was mentioned as one of the projects that Together Women Rise is supporting. So this is a new program that we are piloting with support from Together Women Rise. It involves female students who've moved on to secondary school. So typically in Zambia, there's often secondary schools or boarding schools or day schools. But typically secondary is like a little more serious. There's more schoolwork, there's more homework. And so the idea is that during the school breaks, secondary students will be back in their home villages and can support primary girls in their education. So in particular, helping students with foundational skills, reading with them, sort of like a big sister, a little sister type program, but with the intention of them having someone in the secondary school program that can guide them, tell them what to expect, because often we see there's a big drop off in countrywide in Zambia where students can successfully complete primary school, but then don't go on to secondary. Zambia just passed a free secondary education act, which typically finances were a barrier before, but now that that's not a barrier, we just want to make sure that primary students feel really supported and have a trusted female mentor in their lives.
Fantastic. Thank you both. Sarah is now going to read aloud a few of the questions from the audience. And if you haven't already, please go ahead and submit your questions in the chat. We'll try to get to as many of them as we can. I know we have lots more that we would love to know from both of these amazing women. Sarah, do you want to take it away and see what we have?
Yeah. So our first question is there a pool of women that you hire your school teachers from that you kind of have like on call or that you're already thinking about?
Yeah, I can take that one. So teachers in community schools in Zambia have to be trained. This is over the last, I would say 10 years, that's been a big shift. And so we have just generally an open application to any qualified teachers to apply. We do have some relationships with a nearby college of education, but it's not necessarily women focused. We're a couple of years away from being able to hire alumni back, which we're excited to be that old eventually, but that's really, there's a great organization that really aims to have 100% of their teachers from their own schools, which I remember reading about many years ago and thinking was really inspiring. So there isn't a women pool. We do aim to have gender equality across all of our various levels throughout the organization, but there isn't necessarily a pool of women directly that we hire from. Morgan, how about you?
Yeah, so all of the women who we trained through our Girls United program are existing teachers in the public primary schools. So we don't actually hire any teachers, but our programs team works directly with teachers and the schools to provide support and ongoing training to those teachers who are already in the schools, which we've seen be really impactful because they already have that relationship with the community, and a lot of them are from, if not that, village, at least, the sub-county or county. So they have a lot of that knowledge about, cultural norms in the area as well. So that's been working really well for us. And then at our own academy, we do hire teachers. We have a staff of, I think, like 10 to 12 teachers right now. And so we are a private academy and we just hire, based on qualifications. And we do have gender parity right now, I think, between male and female teachers, but we might now be tipping more towards more female teachers just because that's who's applied, not that we've necessarily sought that out.
Great. Thank you. So next question is, someone says that they're interested in how these great programs work around conservative and community and cultural ideas regarding topics that are considered potentially taboo, especially around sexual and reproductive health topics, and given the fact that they might be working with government schools. So kind of just talking about how these programs work around the community and cultural ideas around the subjects of like sexual and reproductive health and how you navigate that.
So in Kenya, they actually do have a lot of, things that are stipulated in their national curriculum regarding, sexual reproductive health, puberty, menstrual hygiene. We've seen that because, especially for years where students are having to take exams, those topics might not be taught because they're more focused on science, math, composition. And so really our programming is based around what is already, stipulated in the curriculum. We're not really straying outside of that in terms of topics that you wouldn't normally promote or that aren't age appropriate. That doesn't mean we don't still, face some, maybe skepticism, I would say, from parents or even teachers themselves. And I don't really have a great straightforward answer because it's a work in progress. But I think for us, what's worked really well is, again, engaging parents and community members so they're, aware and getting the same information. They know what their students are being taught. It's not a secret. And if they have questions, they have the relationship with the Girls United patrons to ask, to see our curriculum, to know what topics are being covered. And then in particular for men and boys, we intentionally try to involve them in every one of our interventions. Aside from the Girls United clubs, men and boys are actively involved. And, sometimes people might be wary of something that they don't know anything about. And so by bringing them in and having the whole community be a part of what we're doing, we found that has slowly started to, maybe make people feel more comfortable or more excited about the work that we're doing. But it's not going to be a cut and dry thing, and it's definitely a work in progress still.
Yeah, very similar in Zambia. So in Zambia, like puberty, reproductive health, especially around the HIV/AIDS epidemic, became part of the Zambian curriculum. And so they are technically in the upper primary and secondary school curriculums. I think they are not necessarily emphasized in other government schools. And so one thing we do when there is pushback, or we do have like a head teacher or a government official visiting the school and asking questions, is just have on hand at the, near the lesson resources for the teacher where it's coming from in the Zambian syllabus, and being really clear with teachers on, you know, what is in the syllabus and what they can teach and what would be considered outside of the syllabus, so that we're really following the conventions of the local like curriculum. The second thing I would say is that that's the in-school particularly subject areas. In our work in the communities, and particularly around gender-based violence or teenage pregnancy cases that we've had across our schools, we have a variety of responses from parents and family members, ranging from denial that a student is pregnant and requests for us to never visit their home again because their child is not coming back to school and we can't make them. And that is true. And so some of these things are generational. Our social workers do as much as they can to support students, but by teaching our students and giving them all these different tools and negotiation skills, one of the hopes is that will then translate into a different outlook when they are parents, right? And Morgan mentioned also doing work with boys. Similarly, our life skills and reproductive health workshops are with boys as well. And the goal there is really to have them be allies for these young girls, so that if someone's sister is in a dangerous situation, they can speak up and they have places to speak up. And so I don't think these are easy solutions, and it's really tough work. And I mentioned persistence earlier, it's really persistent work. So I do think it's not always so easy as just like putting on a workshop and thinking that it'll change everything. It's really slow going work and working really closely with communities that may not be as receptive as you'd like.
Thank you. So we have time for one more question. So this question you've kind of answered in different ways before, but it's kind of like a summary. How have you both seen girls develop their own agency through the targeted work that you're doing to support them in their communities? And then is there one biggest barrier, if any, that's getting in the way of women and girls developing their own agency? I know it's kind of a hard question because there's a lot of different factors in there and you've kind of touched on it, but I don't know if there's like a summation that you can put in there of like, this is the one thing that if we could just get out of the way, that would really like help us build agency better.
Don't have one thing, maybe Morgan will. I think, like I mentioned, speaking up and disclosing is like something that we keep track of and, really notice in our work. And I've also talked about challenges with family members or even caretakers for these girls at home. I don't have a big barrier, but I have one story that I'd love to share, which is just, last year we had, I think about 7 or 8 students who were pregnant or gave birth and were in grade 7. And grade 7, as I've talked about, has this big exam. If you don't write that exam and pass it, you don't get to go to secondary. You have to wait a whole year. And for pregnant students or students who just had a baby, it's so unlikely that they will go to secondary school if they don't take that exam. And so we just had our social workers constantly trying to convince them, like, you can do this, like, just take the exam. Like, it costs you nothing to just sit and write the exam and show what you know and see where that lands you. All 7 of them passed. And then they all registered for secondary school, and in feedback sessions with them in particular, that has given them a pride that they just didn't know they had. And so it's not necessarily answering your question. Like, I don't think there's one barrier, but it's like one example of like, if you can get students to complete and pass their grade 7 exams, they have a pathway to secondary. If they don't, they'll never have that pathway. And the longer they wait to take that exam, the less likely they are to take it.
Yeah, I don't have one thing. I wish I did, because maybe that would make the work that we do a bit easier. But I think, again, what we've really seen in girls is, that disclosure, speaking up in class, taking on leadership positions. And right now for primary school girls, that is a way that they're able to exercise agency. And something we always want to be careful about when we're talking about our work is you can empower girls all day long. But if the systems that are in place are still not equitable, if they're not accessible, then, you know, that girl being able to speak up for herself doesn't necessarily mean that she's going to get to that next step or truly be able to you know, be self-determined. And so that's where, again, just the engagement with the community and trying to build a network and, you know, bolster the systems that already exist in our community, so that while we're empowering girls, we're also creating an environment that allows them to make those decisions. And so I think it's a long process, and it's not something Flying Kites will do on our own or in the next 5 years, but hopefully we're working towards an environment that really enables girls to exercise the agency that we're seeing them start to exercise in these small ways. And hopefully that's kind of a ripple effect.
Thank you both so much, Morgan and Reshma, for coming tonight, especially after the long trips you've had and all the work that you're doing, and for the amazing organizations that you're helping to build and to have helped girls and women, you know, throughout the world. It's people like you doing the work that you're doing that gives us inspiration and that truly is helping to make a difference. So I really appreciate you being here tonight, and thank you for that. As a reminder, Together Women Rise does depend on donations to support grants like those that provide to Impact Network and Flying Kites, and to provide a wide variety of learning and engagement opportunities, including these webinars. So if you can make a one-time or recurring gift on our website, and Sarah is putting the donations link in the chat now. Thank you to everyone who attended this evening. We welcome you to attend more of our upcoming events. I have a few just to announce here this evening. Our next monthly webinar is on September 5th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and we'll be discussing using sports and the arts to increase girls' agency. We'll have speakers from our 2 featured grantees, Mind Leaps and Moving the Goalpost Kilifi. Our next book club is on the book Last to Eat and Last to Learn, My Life in Afghanistan, Fighting to Educate Women by Pashtana Durrani. And I just finished this book a couple of weeks ago. It's an excellent read, and it will amaze you what this amazing young woman has done. It's inspiring, just like our guests tonight have been so inspiring. We'll be hosting a conversation with the author on Thursday, September 12th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. We will also be holding a separate online event for those interested in a deeper discussion about the book on September 19th at 8 p.m. Also, the Together Women Rise Advocacy Group with Results will be hosting a webinar on September 24th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and that's entitled How to Maximize Your Power for Change. Attendees will have the opportunity to learn how to maximize their impact through advocacy and hear from guest speakers, including current members of the advocacy group, RISE grantees, and a representative from an office member of Congress. Save the date also for the International Day of the Girl event coming up in October 12th. Our event is at noon Eastern Time, at which we'll be offering a free webinar featuring girl leaders sharing their stories of agency of change across efforts for peace building, ending gender-based violence, and climate change. You can find all of this information on our website at togetherwomenrise.org. Just click on the Join Us tab and then Upcoming Events, where you can learn more, register for the events, and access recordings of past events. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us tonight, and we hope to see you at a future event. And again, thank you to our speakers. Everyone, have a great evening. Thanks.